Welcome, everyone. This is once again your host, Shailesh, bringing you live through our media, NZ World News Positive, which is all we talk about positive, but we talk with real people. We talk with real experience. We talk with real information, real experiences, and real wisdom, and bringing you speakers from all around the world. But today, I have got the pleasure to invite Regine, who is the founder of Saha, but also this is an emotional well-being series that we started few years ago, and topic something that is favorite to everyone, but it's not favorite, it's actually embedded in us, the topic that we are bringing you live today. And Regine is one of the experts, because I call it experts because everybody is expert in some or the other, but she has claimed experts because she has earned it by internationally certifying herself to become a coach, to empower the individuals, to empower the mental strength and the resilience of we all humans we need every single moment. And what more a topic today that we're bringing you is actually affecting our emotional well-being, affecting our mental strength, affecting our resilience to become resilient. The topic is called habits. Now, habits is something, oh, I've got this habit, I've got habit. Let's not dwell into it. Let's talk to the expert Regine and let's uncover what is these habits is all about. So today we are going to cover this topic habits, because the science behind the habits, the breaking bad habits, effectively building and adding, to new, is definitely something that we keep doing. And I think this conversation today is going to be very interesting, because this is also I am affected. Every single person are affected with habits. It doesn't matter good, bad, but habits are something that is our natural instinct. So something that we come with, something that we can change, something that we can control, something that we follow. But let's talk about it. So, but today I'm gonna invite Regine. Regine, once again, welcome you to this beautiful episode of today called Habits. Thank you very much for taking the opportunity and giving us the opportunity to bring you live on this beautiful topic. So let's start something. Introduce yourself and let's then begin this beautiful topic. Over to you, Regine.
Thank you so much, Shailesh, for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to be here. I'm excited to speak about habits. Like you said, we have a lot of different habits, and sometimes, most of the time, we don't want to deal with them. But
Mm,
it's really important to really understand why we have them and what we can do if we want to change them. So,
mm,
yes, it's Regine. I'm the founder of Saha. As Shailesh mentioned, I'm an internationally certified results coach.
mm.
And I specialize in coaching and training Gen Zs and millennials, so mostly under 40s, but also those who are young at heart, who are always looking forward to improve themselves, especially in mental strength. That's our confidence, resilience, our commitment, and taking on challenges. So, yes, I'm here today to have a really interesting conversation with Shailesh on how we can change our habits if we want to. And that's, yeah, basically one of the most, I think, most common goals that my clients have, changing
Mm.
or replacing bad habits into better ones.
So yeah, so all the listeners, welcome to this beautiful episode, and I'm gonna get straight into it, Regine. First, let us design and define what is habits are and why do we have to worry about habits. Let's talk about that first. Let me uncover that.
Yeah.
Habits.
So the first question, what is habits? This is a very good question. So habits are the things that we do automatically. So the difference between our usual behavior or the things that and I decided that okay, I am going to keep my notes. So I put my notebook here and I'm going to have water to keep myself hydrated. So I keep my mug here. So everything had a decision happening. But then habits are things that happen automatically.
Mm.
So these are the things we don't even need to think about. It just happens. So why do we need to worry about it? Well, do we really need to worry about it?
Mm.
I think you said a very important statement earlier where we can have good or bad habits. And the
Mm.
interesting thing is our brain doesn't recognize which one is good. and which one is bad.
Mm.
So our brain automates particular behaviors based on the reward or how we feel or what we get after doing that behavior. And
Mm.
so if I can just insert a little bit of background with how the brain works in terms of habits and how it develops habits, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
So
we have
before you jump into that, I just
yeah.
have a curiosity question. Does
Mm.
this pattern or that we follow habits is also called as subconscious mind, or can that be called as subconscious mind? Then you can elaborate. Anyway, you go ahead. I'm just wanted to know about that as well. Like, can we say habits is like a subconscious mind because, as you said, we sit like this, we have water before we start, or we have got certain habits, certain etiquettes that we follow. Is that a subconscious thing, or is it like we create that?
Well, initially, before
Mm.
habits become automated,
Mm.
these are decisions that we make. Hey, I'm feeling stressed. I want to eat something sweet, right?
Mm.
Or I don't know what to do. I want to have a cigarette. And
Mm.
so these are decisions. But
Mm.
then eventually, because we keep repeating the same thing, our our brain starts automating it that, oh, it worked last time. I think you should do the same this time so that we
Mm.
don't need to exert so much effort making decisions on what you should do next. And so eventually it becomes subconscious. So instead of our logical mind, it becomes the subconscious. Particularly, we call it the basal ganglia, the part of the brain that's responsible with our emotions, pattern recognition. So we don't consciously think about it, but it's in the subconscious. So
Mhm.
automatically we just do it.
Yeah. So is it something like we can say that, if we want to develop certain things that we observe and do, or we can create our own that gets us feel that, oh, this is the right way because I feel good about it. So I want to follow this. So you follow your own or you follow someone because, sometimes you follow others who he uses his hands like this or he uses his fingers like that. I want to do that. That also like following a pattern or following a habit that someone has got. But then
Mm.
at the same token, we also have that opportunity to create our own identity by those habits. How do
Yes,
you say that? Yeah, can you talk about that a bit?
yes, yes. The first part of your question, where we are actually imitating others' patterns because we feel like, oh, it worked for them, it must work for us. And I
Mm,
think
mm,
most of our habits, especially growing up, is what
mm,
developed from what we observe and how our parents and family, have
mm,
instilled those habits into us. And so, like you said, we didn't have that independent sense of identity of who we are, but
mm,
then we already started creating those habits. And then we reach a certain point in our life, maybe in teenage years or maybe even later, but we realize that actually this is who I want to be. That's the sense of identity, right? That
mm,
you were mentioning earlier. That
mm,
is this aligned with me? Does this help me to be the person who I want to be? And I think that's how we define what is good and what is bad habit.
mm,
Because, like I said, at the end of the day, our brain's function is to make sure that we feel good and we are safe. And
mm.
so if I keep eating sugar, because I like sugar,
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
brain knows that, Regine is so happy, let's keep craving for sugar.
Mm,
And then the brain thinks it's a good habit. But I don't want to be the unhealthy
mm,
Regine. I don't want to be the Regine that lacks self discipline. You know what I mean? And so
mm,
that's where, yes, I think the short answer is yes, we can create new habits that
mm.
help us become the person who we really want to be.
Mm. But also, like coming to that, because this is an emotional well-being series of topics that we bring, and one of these topics is habits, and it does affect whether it is good or bad. It does affect our emotional well-being. It does impacts us. So
Mm-hmm.
how do you, like, what is your reason, like, okay, to stick to one habit or stick to this habit that will make our emotional well-being better or better than the previous, so better moving forward, better and better, how do you make those transitional changes as an emotional well-being impact when you follow certain things, when you create certain things, it does affect our emotional well-being. And then we decide, oh, it's not good for me, as you said. Let's it's sugar. Sugar is good for me, my mind says. But then, oh, my health says I'm too sick now because of the sugar. But at that point, when we created this habit or pattern, we didn't realize, but we just did it basically. But now we want to move from there, and we want to extend our, impact, positive impact we want to extend, because our emotional well-being is trying to tell us something else. So in those changes that we want to make, transitional changes, what sort of, pattern, behavior that you see we should as a human adopt, or to, take those decisions on our own, rather
Mm.
than following someone or asking someone to tell you that you are wrong or you're bad?
Yeah, yeah, good question. I think number one is what you've already mentioned earlier. Recognize who do you really want to be. Now, a
Yeah.
lot of a lot of the people who come to me and say that I have a bad habit of smoking, or I'm addicted to weed, for
Mm.
example, or alcohol. There are people who have obsession with panicking and just
Yes.
overwhelming. So habits are not just physical, they are also mental habits. And so recognize that who do you want to be, because without that knowledge or awareness, we can't really identify what is good, quote unquote good, or quote unquote bad. Like you said,
Mm.
otherwise other people will tell us that that's bad for you. And if I am addicted to sugar,
Mm-hmm.
and someone will come and tell me, no, but sugar is good for me because I feel better, no one can convince me that sugar is bad because I believe that it's good for me.
Mm-hmm.
So number one, know who you really want to be. Know your identity. Number two is believe that it's possible to change. Now,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people have these habits that are generational, and so some people would justify that I'm alcoholic because my father was alcoholic and my grandfather was alcoholic. And so they already have that identity that I am alcoholic and I cannot change it. It's me. So number two is very important, that even though you grow up in a particular household, or you have a particular life circumstance and you feel like nothing can change you, you have to believe that it can be changed. Because at the end of the day, everything is just in the brain. And now
Mm.
number three, which I think is tackling on the emotional well-being, which I think is a very
Mm.
broad topic, because
Yeah.
in emotional well-being, a lot of people experience different struggles. It can be as common as stress. It can be something a little bit more severe like depression. It can be something a little bit, worse than that.
Mm.
But knowing that yes, you can change something, changing habits, the key is to make sure that you start small,
Mm.
right? So there are many techniques on how to change habits, but what I see from most people, the most common mistake is that, okay, I don't want to drink 3 cups of coffee. This is
Mm.
my personal example. I
Mm.
used to drink 3 cups of coffee every day. Imagine that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And and if when I said that, okay, I am not having any coffee at all, I am
Mm.
just having water and juice, and
Mm.
I totally deprived myself like extreme to extreme, it's just going to be unsuccessful. It just doesn't happen.
Mm.
So it has to start at a level that it's so small that when you think about it, you cannot fail.
Mm. Mm. Now, this is something very interesting that you said, and I wanted to just elaborate on that. Like, if I had to ask you a simple interaction, like every human doesn't know what is good and what is bad, but they know that body likes this, they know that mind likes that, so they are doing it. So the science, as you said, the first topic was the science behind these habits. We don't know. But you just know that we like it as a personal mind point of view and health and a body point of view. So body craves something, mind craves something, and then we intake that. Now that is
Mm,
a habit of intaking. But then there is an outgoing habit as well, that we like this, we like that, we like to accumulate, we like to collect, we like to, make those outer transitions as well, outer things as well we want as a habit, and it makes a habit. If I have to ask you, like, because we don't know as a human, only we know when the doctors check us, oh, scientifically you are sick. Otherwise, until that, you are okay to do everything and anything. How would you, make those, what would you, as a coach, how would you tell people that, hey, look, whatever you intake is okay. Subconsciously, you do okay. You have created that habit or pattern because you like it or you don't like it. Doesn't matter. You have created that. But scientifically, this is not good, or you need to balance, or it is imbalance. What would be your coaching for those humans? Because we all are normal and we don't know. We are not doctors. We are not science. We are not science students. So, you said the science behind the habits and the subconscious mind behind the habits.
Mm,
These are two different things because scientifically, as you said, the body craves for sugar. And
mhm,
that could be something scientifically in our body that is telling us to do. But then, as a mindset habit, our emotional well being tells us, hey, just crave for these potato chips because you like it. How would you then make those advice to those normal humans that how to balance it
mm.
scientifically and also subconsciously? How do you balance it? What's your
Yeah,
coaching
I think
advice, tips?
yeah, so I think number one is making sure that the client understands why they have habits. And so when, if for example, it's how do, if you just understand and really visualize that
Mm.
the one that is craving is your brain, it's not you, and the
Mm.
brain is controlling you, and you want to take that power back to control your brain,
Mhm, mhm,
wouldn't you do that? And so when this became habits because we have repeated them. The more we repeat them, we have a greater sense of craving. The
mm,
more we repeat the reward, we have greater sense of satisfaction.
mm,
Now, what happens is when, let's talk about social media, for
mhm,
example.
mhm,
So
mhm. Yeah,
if you've heard of the hormone dopamine, a lot of people have been talking about that's the feel good hormone. So we feel
yeah.
motivated, we feel good if we have a boost of dopamine. So what happens is we have a standard baseline. Okay, this is how much dopamine I
Mhm,
have. But then let's say I I suddenly had a really yummy piece of cake, right? And when I eat it, I
mhm,
feel satisfied, so I get that boost of dopamine. Suddenly I feel super good.
mm, mm,
And so I don't eat cake, it goes back to baseline. I eat again something sweet, it goes up.
mm,
Now the problem is the more I do that, the more spice I have, now my baseline becomes higher too. So
mm,
I need to take in more sugar until I become addicted to it.
mm, mm,
So in coaching,
mm,
in terms of coaching advice, as coaches, we don't usually give direct advice. So
mhm,
I always ask the person, what do you really want out of your life? Or who do you
mm,
really want to be? Because I cannot just say that, hey, social
mm,
media is bad for you. You
mm,
have to stop scrolling.
mm,
But maybe that's part of who they really want to be. Maybe that's part of their life goal. And so when a person is clear that I really want to be someone who is just happy and emotionally well and grateful, this
mm,
is all about the emotional habits, emotional well being habits. And it's if they already know that yes, actually what I want is to be happy, not comparing myself on people on social media. I want to be more grateful, more mindful. Then
mm,
everything that you do, if you know that I want to be mindful, I want to be happy, the moment you catch yourself comparing,
mm,
then you can label that habit as a quote unquote bad habit because it's not letting you be happy, it's not
mm,
letting you be grateful, it's making you the opposite of that.
mm,
And then the advice for that is number one, identify the trigger.
mm,
So
mm,
a lot of people in terms of social media, they pick up their phone whenever there's a notification. So that's their trigger. Sometimes they get bored, so they pick up the phone. So getting bored is their trigger.
mhm,
So
mhm,
identify your trigger if you have a quote unquote bad habit. And
mhm.
then you know that your response is to suddenly mindless
Yeah,
scroll.
yeah. Mhm,
So the what we do in coaching is to identify a very small step that you cannot fail at all.
mm,
You could really cannot fail and replace that habit. So
mm,
that next time you get bored or next time your phone rings a notification, instead of picking up a phone, maybe let's replace it with something else.
Hmm.
Maybe turn off your phone instead,
Yeah.
or something very different. It can even be something that stand up and go to the kitchen where you can't see your phone and come back. So it really depends on the person, because different people, different things will work differently. And so, yeah, I think having advice from others is good, especially when you see that it's working for them. But as
Mm.
individuals, it's very important to know who we are, because if it's
Mm.
not aligned with who
Mm.
we are or who we want to be, we can never be successful in the long term. It might work in the next 7 days, but not longer than that.
Yeah, so like some, if I have to extend this question to like, what is according to you the good habits and what is according to you the bad habits, if you have to say, because
Yeah.
sometimes in you are in a profession where social media is your norm,
Yeah.
and that becomes your norm and that becomes your habit, but that's possibly the doctors scientifically say no, that's not good for you because you have been too long on your computer, too much on your online, and that's not good for your neck or your hands or your shoulders or whatever, and then that has caused that. But then that's your norm. What do you do basically? So is it a good habit you call that, or is it a bad habit you call it because it doesn't work for your health wise, but it's
Mm.
your profession and it works for you in your mind wise, in your mental wise it works, but then there is no balance or it is an imbalance, right? What would you say according to you, your perspective, in your perspective rather than anyone's, that what is the good habits that you will call it and what is the bad habits that you would call it, or why is it bad and why is it good according to you, if at all, those habits?
Mm.
Tell me something.
Yeah. So I think my answer would be same. Good habits would be the habits that help you with
Mm-hmm.
whatever you want to achieve or who you want to be. Bad habits are the opposite of that. But
Mm-hmm.
I think in the context of your question, I think it's really important to break it down. So
Mm-hmm.
I part of my work is social media, and so I
Yeah.
am always in there. So I cannot, if the doctor tells me, like I went to a reflexology massage once, and she
Yeah.
was like, oh, this, she can feel some nerve. And she said that you're always on your phone. I was like, yeah, I am. She said, you should reduce your phone. I said,
Right.
And so I just, I have to identify, number one, what is the why?
Mm-hmm.
Why is she telling me it's bad for me? So the bottom line there is health, not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily not necessarily social media is bad for me. She's just telling me that my health is affected. And so under social media, it's my health. So
Mm-hmm.
I know that I cannot get rid of this social media. It's part of
Mm-hmm.
my work. But what
Yeah.
I can do is manage the way I use social media so it's not affecting my health. Or maybe work around my environment or the people I work with or my timing, other factors that affect it. So I'll give you an example myself.
Yeah,
So
sure.
I have to be on social media a lot, not just
Mm-hmm.
on Facebook, also on LinkedIn, on Instagram. I have to be there. And so I cannot just say that, no, I'm not using my phone. But what I do to make sure I'm healthy, for example, mentally healthy, is that I turn off my notification on my desktop, on my laptop, so that I do not get disturbed when I work on my laptop. So all the notifications ping on my phone, but I put my phone away while working. So
Mm-hmm.
like right now, my phone is outside this room. I can't see it. On Messenger of Facebook, I turn off the visibility so you can't see if I'm online. But I
Mm-hmm.
also can't see others online. And so it doesn't distract me that, oh, that person is I wanna talk with her and this and that. And then number three, for physical well-being, because the
Mm-hmm.
underlying problem is health, not social media. I have a standing desk. So
Mm-hmm.
I know that even if I'm always on the computer, I
Mm-hmm.
can stand up sometimes, I can sit down sometimes. And then all the other things that we can do in our lives, that, okay, I am still on social media maybe 8 hours a day, but I am creating, not consuming, like I'm not mindless
Mm-hmm.
con-
Yeah.
consuming. I'm creating something, I'm engaging, I'm talking. But at least I exercise, at least I drink, a lot of water, at least I have a healthy workstation. And that's how,
Mm-hmm.
we can balance, as you say. It has to
Mm-hmm.
be a balance.
Mm-hmm. So what are the two bad habits that you have created and then you realize
Very good question. Um, I think the coffee habit has become very bad. There were days when we ran out of coffee and we
All
didn't have
right.
time to go and get coffee, and I just had a headache day after day, and I realized, oh my gosh, it's the coffee.
Mm,
And so I after that I've decided to, okay, let's I really need to cut down on coffee. So what I've done is in the morning,
mm,
so what my routine is, I drink immunity shot in the morning, and then I
mm-hmm.
have coffee with breakfast before I have my first drink of
Right.
water, and
Right.
then I have coffee again, and then I have coffee again, and then I have water. And so it's very bad, and I know I created it because I love coffee. Brain loves coffee, right? Not me.
Brainless.
So what I did is, okay,
Mm,
I know that I cannot function the entire day if I don't drink my morning coffee. And so I didn't force myself to drink water in the morning. I know it's the best thing, but I wouldn't start there because I know I will fail. Oh yeah, and before I continue, I remember there's a behavioral scientist, and his research proves that we only change
mm.
when we feel good about it. So we
Yeah.
can't change if we don't feel good about the change.
Mm,
So what I did is after my first coffee in the morning, I fill up a 500 ml bottle of water,
mm-hmm.
and I don't drink another cup of coffee until I finish that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I drink a cup of coffee, and then I finish another bottle of water before my third cup of coffee if I still want to. And so if you notice, I did not remove my caffeine intake in the beginning. Instead, I increased my healthy intake
Mm.
so that, when you change habits into good habits,
Yeah.
suddenly it becomes domino effect that, oh, I
Yeah.
want to do this more, I want to do this more. So now I
Mhm.
only drink one cup of coffee. I still do in the morning, but I drink more water.
But see, extending to that answer, like I wanted to so have you noticed that there are certain habits that are harmless and there are certain habits that are harmful? As
Yeah.
in my world, I feel. How would you, then how do you stick to the habits that are harmless or that are harmful, and then you remove those habits which are harmful because you do realize quickly, it's not, habits are not something like a fire, like a matchstick. If you put your finger, if you burn your finger, I'm not going to put my finger into the fire. That's a bad thing. But for a harmful habit, it takes number of years or number of months or number of days to understand, oh, this has been harmful to me, or I have
Mm,
been addicted to this, but I didn't
yeah.
realize. Now,
Mm,
it's not like an immediate reaction like a fire, which tells you immediately that, hey, this is not good for you. I'm burning you.
uh,
How do you make that, call early in your life so that you don't become too much harmful with your habits? Um, what's your tips on that? Like all the people who are listening, everybody has got some or the other habit, but then defining harmful and harmless habits,
mm,
defining good and bad, defining yourself, taking those decisions. If you are drinking too much coffee, like simple thing, coffee, drinking too much, if it's getting you addicted and you are having headaches, then what is it? Like, is it a good thing, or is it harming you, or what is it? How do you make those kind of quick decisions when it comes to habits, in your view?
mm,
How do you humans can take decisions quite fast as soon as you realize, or whenever you realize? What's the trigger point, as you were talking about initially? What is the trigger point, that how did you
mm.
develop this habit? So what was the trigger? Go back to your roots or go back to the source. But then now you have eliminated the source, you have ignored the source, you have gone ahead too much. Now you want to realize quickly. So what's your tips to that, Regine?
Yeah, so I think the first question where the effect of the habit we can't see it immediately instead of long
Yeah.
term. One question that I usually ask the people I work with is this something you would regret 10 years from now? Or is
Uh,
this something you would regret 5 years from now? If you keep doing this for the next
mm,
5 years,
mm,
where would you be, and would you be happy? Would you be proud of yourself, or would you regret it? And
mm.
so we don't usually think of the long term because of the immediate reward, like, oh, alcohol feels good,
Correct.
right? But then
Correct.
eventually, if you really think about it, because everything already, most of the things already have evidences on why they're bad for us. And
Yep.
so if you ask somebody, okay, so you drink like one whiskey a day, one shot of
Yeah.
whiskey a day. Let's say you keep doing that and let's reach to 2030. How
Mm,
do you see yourself? What's your state of health? Can you still go and play with your kids? Can you still travel where you want to go?
mm,
And
mm,
the moment that people realize that, it
mm,
becomes easier for them that, oh my gosh, this is
mm,
actually where I'm heading. But I think the most important thing when you ask me, how can people stick to these habits?
mm,
Or what is the fastest way for them to actually change those
mm.
habits?
Correct.
The most important thing that I learned even in brain science is that we cannot replace a habit if
Mm,
we do not see a greater benefit
mm.
in what we are replacing. And these
Correct.
are not just the benefits that are obvious, such as health or the way we look. These are also something that we can't see, like emotions. Since,
Mm,
of course, we're talking about emotional well being, this is actually more important than what we can see.
mm,
Because let's talk about addiction, for example.
mm,
And let's talk about people, chronic smokers, let's
mm,
say. And every
mm.
time they smoke a cigarette, they obviously know that it's bad for their health, right? Who doesn't know that?
Yeah.
They keep
Yeah.
smoking. They keep smoking because the brain feels good about it. But then what's that emotion behind smoking? Is
Yeah.
it the sense of belonging you get from your friends because you smoke
Mm,
together? Is it
mm,
a
mm.
sense of relief from stress because you always make it escape from stress? And so there's always that underlying emotion. And so if I say it's quit smoking,
Mm,
people don't think about, oh yeah, that's better health. The
mm,
person will think, but my friends won't accept me anymore,
mm.
right?
Yeah.
But then I will be mentally stressed because I don't have escape.
Mm,
And so I think for people, and this is a little bit, this takes time to identify, especially if you're doing it on your own, but nobody knows yourself more than you do.
yeah.
But what we do
True.
as coaches, yeah, but what we do as coaches is really facilitate it to be faster, to
Mm,
really recognize what's beneath that. Because those are the emotions in the subconscious mind that we do not think about. We are not consciously thinking that I want to be accepted by my friends, so I'm going to smoke, a
mm,
packet per day.
mm.
Otherwise, I don't belong. And
Yeah.
so identifying that value, it has to be bigger than the value you're getting. So the
Mm,
question is for that smoker, for example, how can you feel a greater sense of belonging after you quit smoking?
mm.
And that's a very hard question because to them, it's like, hey, I reject the premise of your question. It's the
Yeah.
only thing that gives me a sense of belonging. But the moment you keep asking that question, it's like it breaks the neural pathways that's been there for a long time. And then suddenly their brain will start thinking that, oh my gosh, there are so many ways I can actually get a sense of belonging. And if the moment they realize that actually quitting smoking will give me, better
Mm,
sense of belonging to my friends or family, then it's easier for them to change.
mm,
Maybe health, good health, they know it's good health, but it doesn't give them anything.
mm.
So,
So coming to one of the important being and you being talking about the science behind it, the habits, and also the breaking the habits, and also like sticking to the habits, so creating a good habits and all that stuff. How scientifically and how subconsciously, I'm just more curious, is like, there is neuroscience, there is neuropsychology and neuroscience. So this is all because habits all related to our neuro brain or our
mm,
mind.
mm,
I wanted to see what's your view on when it comes to identifying the habits from a scientific perspective, whether you assess neuropsychologists, how the neuropsychologists they assess you or they assess your assessment through your brains, what's going on in your brains and all that stuff by giving you a lot of exercises and patterns to understand what patterns are you following or what your brain is following, just to
mm,
make them those informed decision. Because as I said, like it's very hard to know what habits are you creating for yourself. You don't know until you have created. And until you realize, sometimes it's too late, sometimes it's too early to change, sometimes it's not too early to change. Based on that, these kind of things, how would you make those, decisions on neuroscience, neuropsychologists when they try to assess, or you yourself being in that position to understand and identify for what would be your message to the listeners who are listening currently in terms of how to break the habits, how to break which are the bad habits. First of all, how to identify good and bad habits. And then secondly, what is the source of your habits? But also, because when you realize it's good, you don't go to the source. When you realize bad, then you go to the source. So isn't it good to also go to the source of good habits and bad habits together rather than just bad habits to the source? What's your view on it? What would be you will be telling to all the listeners who are listening currently?
Well, being aware of all the habits that we have, whether it's good or bad, is, I think, really helpful for personal growth. As I would say, a lot of people would identify the trigger or the source, as you said, of the bad habits because they
Mhm.
want to focus on changing them. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't pay attention on the triggers of our good habits. I do believe, though, that if it's already good, why fix them? Unless you want to make it better, then definitely pay attention to that. For the bad habits, number one, how do you identify? Ask yourself, is
Mm,
this making me making me getting me closer to where I want to be, or
mm,
the other way around? And
mm,
I think that's the only question that you need to ask to identify whether it's you need to continue that habit or you need to break that habit.
sure.
Because if it's making you farther away, yeah,
Mm,
it's really different from everyone. I just want to share one short story. So I have an
mm,
auntie, and she knew that she was diagnosed with breast cancer quite early. But then she was given two options: go through chemotherapy, go through all the medication, radiation, not be able to eat a lot of stuff, drink all medication, but have the chance to prolong her life. She had the second option, which is do nothing and then suddenly suffer at the end of her life, which is going to be a lot shorter than it would be, etc. And so for my auntie, a lot of people would say that why don't you get medication? That's why medication is there, right? And
mm,
prolong your life. That's the best thing to do. For my auntie, and bless her, she's passed away now, but she chose the other way where she didn't want to do any chemotherapy, any medication. She didn't want to prolong her life. What she wanted, what she valued emotionally, really, is to be able to travel the world while she's strong, that she can't do if she's weak in chemotherapy,
mm,
and be able to continue eating whatever she wanted to eat. And if her life was cut short because of cancer, at least she would die happy.
mm,
And that was the most important thing for her. And so
mm,
if I would tell this story to somebody, a lot of people
mm,
react as if, oh, why didn't she get chemotherapy? But then
mhm,
who are we to judge, right? Because for her, not getting the treatments and being able to live a shorter life but a happier life was
mm,
her goal. And so that, for every listener right now, what do you really want to be? Who you want to be? Where do you want to be 10, 50 years from now? And if something you're doing right now is not helping you to get there, then
mm.
stop it.
Yep.
Otherwise, don't bother. And then how do we change or break those habits if we identify they are bad?
Mm-hmm.
So once you've identified the trigger, find, if you, number one, I think the most common suggestion is avoid or make a barrier. So if your bad habit is social media, keep your
Mm,
phone away. Like me, I put it away. If you cannot put it away because it's also part of your work, make it a little bit, put a barrier. And so there are some barriers to the habits that we can make. It can be either time, money, making it harder for us to do, or making it harder for us to mentally do,
mm,
or make it outside of our routine. So for example, for social media, you really need to have your phone there, but maybe make it a little bit harder to get onto Facebook. Maybe delete the shortcut icon or uninstall the app, etc. And then replace it. it's very hard to break a habit without a replacement.
Mm,
So
mm,
identify that if this is not helping you get where you want to be, what can you do instead to help you get there, and then replace that.
mm,
And I think what I have not mentioned until now is to celebrate once you've done that new habit.
mm,
Because when we create habits, well, when the brain creates habits, when they automate, it has to be a complete loop. The trigger, the habit, celebration, and it has to repeat again and again. So when we don't celebrate, then the brain thinks that, oh, it's not good because, we didn't have that boost of dopamine and we don't feel good. So, just a simple well done, Regine, well done, Shailesh, or
mm.
you just shout yoo-hoo or whatever makes you feel good. When you're trying to create a habit, make sure that you celebrate it. And that's how the brain learns faster that this is good for you.
Very well said, Regine. This is amazing. So, as we are coming to the end, to all the listeners, this is beautiful conversation with Regine, and what she has given a final message, I think, is celebrate is the last word that she meant. And we all are born to celebrate what we have been given. So, habits are part and parcel of our life journey. But as she mentioned, I want to recap on the things that we discussed. Was one of the things takeaway for me was, Regine, is you said, like we can create habits, we can also create good habits, bad habits, but also we can change our habits from whenever we like, whatever time we want, as long as, it makes us feel good, as long as it makes us work for us. And there is nothing wrong in adopting or creating an habit. However, as we mentioned, that it is all our emotional well-being that is affected through these habits. Because whether you eat too much or whether you eat too less, it is still something that affects our body, mind, and emotions. And so, yeah. So, with all this, I wanted to end this beautiful conversation here. But Regine, going back to you, your final word after this conversation to all the listeners, what would be that in this
Mm,
beautiful topic of habits?
yeah, I think the what I want to say is go for consistency, not intensity. So when changing bad habits, set yourself up for success. It is definitely doable. Whatever your mind can conceive, you can achieve. That's
Mhm.
100% true. So if you want to change something, you want to be better, set yourself up for success by setting mini goals, not big goals, and then be consistent. And once you're consistent, you increase the intensity, and that's how you become successful in changing habits.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah. So, as listeners, this is beautiful. Regine, once again, a coach, internationally certified, talking to us today about beautiful habits that we can create. So, talking to you also can be an habit in that process. And I think I can create an habit of talking to Regine. Regine, thank you and beautiful conversation that we had today. With that note, I end this conversation and we look forward to our next more topics coming with this topic and with this certified kind of internationally certified coach that is here to help you. Send us all your questions, send us feedback, and you can always get in touch with Saha, the company that she is founder. She's a founder of the Saha company, empowering the individuals, empowering your mindsets, empowering your resilience, and all of that, but also taking you out of the troubles of if you have created a bad habit for yourself and if you can't navigate, Regine will be there to help you and hold your hand. With that, thank you, Regine.
Thank you so much, Shailesh. It was lovely chatting with you.
Absolutely.